HDMI 2.1 cables are a dime a dozen these days. Tons of cheap cables can be found on places like Amazon, but what if you're after a more premium HDMI cable without spending a fortune? Now, I do want to mention that SVS did send their Soundpath Ultra HDMI cables out to allow me to test them and review them, but this isn't a sponsored video or anything like that, and they don't know what I'm going to say about this product in this video. So I'll cut right to the chase here and say that I typically expect one thing out of my HDMI 2.1 cables, or any HDMI cables for that matter. I want them to work without an issue. Anything extra, such as build quality or aesthetics, are just nice bonuses, but typically HDMI cables get plugged into the back of AV equipment and you never see them again unless it's time for an upgrade or you need to move stuff around. So to my first point, do SVS's cable provide a hassle-free experience when it comes to using them for gaming consoles like the PS5 and Xbox Series X? Yes, 100%. On the Series X, you get all the green check marks provided your display supports everything, and no noticeable image artifacts like white sparklies that you might get out of lesser cables. Now on the PS5, you won't run into any issues there either, with all capabilities of the PS5 available to you if, again, your display supports it. Testing it out on both consoles, and everything works as you would expect. Games that support 4K and 120Hz with variable refresh rate worked with zero issues on both consoles, with or without HDR. Now keep in mind, neither console is pushing the full HDMI 2.1 bandwidth that these cables claim to provide, as currently no device on the market does, well, to my knowledge at least. It's also worth noting that SVS's HDMI cables will handle all the audio formats available through eARC, so if you have a newer receiver or soundbar with HDMI 2.1 functionality and want access to audio formats such as Dolby True HD and Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and 7.1 uncompressed PCM from your gaming consoles while using eARC on your display, then these cables won't cause any issues on that front. Now I was able to test these cables out with an Array, I think that's how you say it, HDMI audio extractor, which allows you to access eARC features on your display even if you have an older receiver or soundbar that doesn't support it. And here again, the cables worked flawlessly. Now comparing them to some of my other HDMI cables from Monoprice and Zestkit, both picture and sound quality here are identical to those, as they should be, honestly. Unless we're talking about fiber optic HDMI cable runs, most HDMI 2.1 cables will either work, they won't, or they'll introduce picture artifacts. Sometimes you'll run into HDMI handshake issues where devices just won't play nice with each other depending on the cable you're using. Now thankfully, none of those issues persist here. So if picture quality and audio quality are the same as less expensive cables, why go with something that's slightly higher in price? Well, personally for me, I'd rather spend a bit more on cables that I know are well built and built to last, and from using these cables and swapping them back and forth between my LG C1 OLED in my theater room to the Hisense U7H I'm currently reviewing in our living room, well, I kind of test the build quality of these cables. They do honestly seem rugged enough to withstand the constant plugging and unplugging I've been doing during testing, which is way more than most people would do, I'd assume. The HDMI connectors on each end are also sturdy and seem pretty durable, and the braided cotton sheath on the cable itself that's laced with the black and blue fabric does add a touch of color. Now, if how your cables look is important to you, these may be more visually pleasing than just a standard black cable. Now, I'll go ahead and put up SVS's image here going over the materials used to make the cables for those that like or want that sort of thing. But in the end, these cables do what they claim to do and are well built and also look nice. Now, in terms of pricing, these are not the cheapest cables around at $29.99 for 1 meter, $39.99 for 2 meter, and $49.99 for 3 meter. But to play devil's advocate here, they are also not the most expensive HDMI cables I've seen, and they literally do the exact same thing. And honestly, they're cheap in comparison to some other offerings out there that I think might be taking their cues from how Monster Cables used to do business, but honestly, that's a discussion for a different video. So would I recommend the SVS Soundpath Ultra HDMI cables? Well, yes, I would, if you want something more sturdily built than some of the cheaper alternatives and also like how they look. Now, the one major critique I have here is that I'd like to see a few more options in terms of aesthetics. I know that the black and blue colors of these cables are intended to match SVS's brand colors, black and blue, but a few more colors to allow for further customization for someone's home theater would honestly be a nice touch. But like I said earlier in the video, most people will probably never see the cables anyway, so this personalization option would simply be a nice to have feature. But hey, if you found this video helpful, feel free to hit that like button. And do you have thoughts on these HDMI cables from SVS? Then please post a comment down below and let me know. And if you're interested, and why not, you're here, check out some of my other SVS videos right in the links to my left. I'm just gonna stare at the camera until the video ends, because this isn't awkward at all.